Okay, so this will be a guide for Mythic Fyrakk as a Shadow Priest. I'll try to keep it as short as possible. This guide was made on January 16th before any significant nerfs, and I do predict there will be nerfs in the near future as this fight is very difficult. So, with that in mind, I will be going over every single important phase of the fight, which is the four phases P1, P1 Intermission, P2, and then lastly P3. Um, this guide will assume that you've already done your research, knowing all the boss mechanics, maybe watching a couple prog kills, knowing the general strat, and it'll just go over some nuances that will help you with prog, specifically for Shadow Priest. So we'll start with the talents. On the right side, it's the very standard single target build with Shadow Crash. Some priests are taking a point out of Phantasmal Pathogen for Void Touch, and I do think that it is comparable DPS, especially since you can pull more Insanity to cast Devouring Plague for the heavy movement that you have to do during this fight. On the left side of the tree, Void Shift is mandatory. You will be using it to heal one of the trees in P2. And the second debate would be between Sanguine Teachings and Vampiric Embrace. I think Vampiric Embrace overall is better, especially if you're assigned to use it as a healing cooldown for the raid, and Sanguine Teaching is good, especially if you're carrying a Corrupted Seed in P3. So, with the talents in mind, I'll start going over each phase individually. Okay, I will preface by saying that my cooldown usage might be different than yours. It really just depends on what the guild needs. For us, I was assigned to use my PI at 0 and 330 for the boss damage in P2. So my usages of Mindbender and Dark Ascension might look a little bit different. In terms of the important parts of P1, as a guild, it's going to be baiting the frontals that do not overlap with the blazes, and then using your personals properly for those hard overlaps, as well as a dream rend, and I'll just go over how I used my personals and how you might want to as well. The second thing is your race. Initially I thought Goblin would be very good on this fight, specifically because of how heavy the movement was when I was watching Prog. In hindsight, I think Dwarf is going to actually be better if you can afford to go Dwarf. Specifically for the Flame debuff, it's in P1, it's probably one of the pain points as healers get more comfortable dispelling. It's just nice to have Stone Form to get rid of that, and there's a weak aura to make that very easy. But I played as Goblin. So let's start the fight. Okay, so first thing that will happen is the frontals into the firestorms. So here you can see the images spawn. For Prog's sake, I'm holding my Void Torrent until after the firestorms anyway, but for Prog, if there's an image next to you, just run next to it and bait it so it doesn't go through the melee. In this case, there's not, so I just have to make do and just see what I can do here. So I Void Torrent here, which is okay because I didn't have any procs, but I think it would be better to Void Torrent after this firestorm in case you get one. I did not get one, so I got a little lucky. But I pre-positioned towards this like right side of the boss area just in case I get one, so I'm just closer to where I have to go. Next is going to be the group soaks. After these frontals, same deal with the frontals. This is the most important part of the fight, especially as priests, because you take so much damage from them. Every time these are out, you really just need to pay attention and look around and see where they're aiming and just try your best to dodge even if it costs you damage. This is actually how I died the most in P1, it's just getting hit by a frontal. So then you do the group soaks. So this is the first part where I use defensive, right? So the group soak, I'll fade, and then I will use Vampiric Embrace to help healing, rolling into the first hard overlap of the fight where I'll press Desperate Prayer. The first hard overlap is going to be the frontals at the same time as blazes. So if you're next to... The way it works is if you don't have the last set of blazes, you'll always be able to bait a frontal and then move out of the way after your blaze pops. So if I was next to a frontal here, I would be baiting it for sure. But if not, like I'm not right now, I just have to look around and be very careful. This is why you pop like most of your defensives other than dispersion. It's just because this is like a very chaotic part of the fight, and this is where you'll probably be getting hit the most. So you dodge the frontals, and then you get ready for the first Dream Rend. If you do have an extra rescue, you should try. So we had 3 evokers. We got pretty lucky in that respect. So I was able to get a rescue for each Dream Rend. It makes it a lot easier. But if not, you're just going to have to run out a lot sooner. So I'm able to stay closer to the boss and get a little bit more uptime because I do have that rescue. If not, it's not a big deal. You lose like 2 casts. And then here, the way it works is the new set of debuffs. This is where my Massive Spell was assigned, and it probably will be where yours is too if you're playing in this fight. But the way it works is if you look at my raid frames on the top left, the new debuffs come out when this cast is halfway done. By default, I think the liquid weak aura has the tick like at 30%, 35%, but I moved it to 50 just to like visualize when I need to MD. So if you look at the top left, you can see the new debuffs coming out. 3, 2, 1. They come out and instantly get dispelled. That's why I moved the tick. So here is going to be the first Dream Rend movement. It's pretty standard. You just move with the raid and then you spread for blazes. I like to use my goblin jump here if you are goblin just to get further out. Ideally, like, you would be out where I'm running to right now, but you're not going to be able to make it there every time. It's just because of these firestorms. And then I use my second Void Torrent after the firestorm in case I get it.
You want to start on
It's pretty standard here. More frontals. This is the easy set. So you just make sure you dodge. Then the group soaks again. And then we're going to be going over the second hard overlap of the P1. This is going to be the same thing, blazes and frontals at the same time. This time you don't have, so during prog I recommend probably just using dispersion here. This is even more dangerous than the first one to be honest, but I got so used to it I was able to just dodge the frontals most of the time, but this is like one of the most hectic parts of P1. So use dispersion for prog. Once you get comfortable you can save it for when I actually use it in P1, and I'll show you when. So this is the second Dream Rend. Again, if you don't have a rescue you're gonna have to run back a lot sooner, but I do. So this is where I use my dispersion because this is also a lot of damage. Usually it's a Disc Priest ramping this for healing. And the reason why I use dispersion is not only to help healing, because I don't take damage at the end of the Dream Rend, but it's also to pre-position closer to the actual source of the Dream Rend because there's more space there, and if you get a blaze, it won't like the likelihood that it'll hit the raid will be less. So yeah, and on top of that, if you do get a blaze, you can sit in dispersion and tank it so you don't take that much damage, because by the end of the by the time you're progging, your DPS won't matter, right? Like you really just need to live P1 and the DPS will come naturally, and sometimes you even have to hold. Like here we're holding. We like to phase during the firestorms, but initially in prog you're probably going to have to play a little bit more of the fight. So after these firestorms would be another set of frontals, and that's what you would push the boss during. We have the damage to push it during these firestorms, which is better for boss damage, but don't worry about it. And the last thing to note is this is when you use whenever you're about to push the boss is when you use your last Void Torrent. You just want to maximize the damage you can in this like incarnate window. So you actually take a fuck ton of damage when the boss lands before you gate, so I try to flash heal myself and other people during this downtime as well as press fade. And that's the end of P1. Okay, so important things for P1 intermission, I will show you our positioning and defensive usages. It's very important that you have Vampiric Embrace and Desperate Prayer. If you do not have these two, because you had to use them in P1 or whatever, then there's going to be a part at the end of the intermission that is very dangerous if you get Blaze and could potentially kill you, and I'll show you when that is. So let's play. So I'm assigned R4. So the way this macro works, we use Northern Sky. If you're R1, R2, and R3, you're basically going to be counting the orbs every single time. You should be as well, as R4 and L4. But what's more important is just staying in the lane around the arc. So as you can see, I'm positioned in my lane, and anytime there's a purple orb next to me, I basically just soak it. So there's actually nothing happening here other than like you just look, make a quick count, and soak. So I look to see like, oh, there's 3 there, so the next purple one's number 4, and I'm just soaking that. And then the first blazes is one I pop Vampiric Embrace, and if I do get a blaze, I also pop Desperate Prayer. That's when the first big dangerous part of the damage is. And then the second blaze is when I pop anything I have left, because this is the blaze, as you can see. Let's look at my HP, right? So during prog, it won't be this high. You'll probably have like 75% HP. If you get one of the later blazes, it does about 500k damage to a priest unmitigated. So if I didn't have Desperate Prayer up, it would do like 60% of my HP plus the ticking damage. Basically does 80% of your HP in one go, which during prog will just kill you. I died a lot to getting the very last blaze set and just trying to flash heal myself, trying to use all my pots, and it still sometimes wasn't enough. That's about it for the intermission. So to recap, it's mostly about where you get assigned. It's more about staying in your lane unless you're number 1, 2, or 3, because a lot of the raid will be situated in the center, and you might let some orbs leak through if you don't stay in your lane. And the second thing is just using your Vampiric Embrace and Desperate Prayer like during or after the first set of blazes, because that's where the fight starts to get dangerous. And then you push, and you can squeeze out a little bit more damage, but then you're going to fight the wind. You don't even need a rescue here. I get one just cause, but you can easily outrun it. And then we're going to enter P2. Okay, so the pain points in P2 are going to be blazes hitting friendly adds, and then the cages from the Colossi being played correctly, and then lastly is going to be the little adds from the breath being properly knocked and gripped in and then CC'd with a CC rotation. The third one you have very little control over, so you're just going to have to hope that your raid just gets the reps in and does it correctly. But the first two can be solved through pre-positioning with the blazes and just being cognizant of where your blaze is going. And then the other one is going to also be solved with pre-positioning. So pre-positioning is very important in P2, especially for priest. Okay, with the pain points in mind, I'll be going over my pre-positioning and why I do certain things, as well as defensive usage. As a general rule of thumb, you're going to want to have Fade when you get Blaze. Additionally, there are 2 Blaze sets that are dangerous where the Colossi spawn right after, and that's a good time to use Vampiric Embrace and Desperate Prayer if they're up. In practice, when you're progging the boss, it's a lot more dynamic when you use your defensives just based on like what your HP is going into certain mechanics. So as long as you're aware of the dangerous parts of the fight, you can use them as needed. So let's start playing. The first thing that's going to happen are the first set of adds are going to spawn, and you're immediately going to want to start cheating over towards the set of 5. This is because the next set that aligns with blazes is going to have a tree on this side, which is a lot easier to dodge with your blaze than 5 sets of small adds. So I'm trying to go as far out as possible before the next set of blazes. And if I had a blaze here, I would just make sure that it didn't hit the tree behind me, and that's all I'd have to worry about. So that's the first dangerous set of blazes, is the blazes into the Colossi spawning. So had I gotten a blaze there, I would have pressed Fade, and if my HP was a little bit lower, I would have had to health pot. And on top, while doing that, it's important that I make sure my blaze doesn't hit the tree. So it's a little bit hectic. Now that the Colossi spawn, as soon as they spawn, you're going to want to use your efficient cast to get as close to the middle as possible, because then the cages are coming out. So the best place you could be, ideally, is like 5 yards where my mouse is, 5 yards in front of our warlock. But because I didn't get any procs and didn't have enough pooled insanity, I wasn't able to get there. This is still okay though, as long as you're close enough to run to one of the markers with your cage. Another important thing to note is with these breaks, right? These red circles. If I had gotten one and was assigned to break one of the two, I would have just waited in the breath. You have plenty of time to wait inside the breath, and then figured out which one I was assigned to, and then run in after their cages pop. This is because if you position on one side like our evoker here, and you have to break the person on the other side, especially as a priest, you do not have enough movement speed to consistently get to the other side, and it might cause you not being able to break the people you're assigned to, which is most likely going to be a wipe. So after this, you want to move into the breath, don't get hit by it, but move in for the next set of blazes. This is because there are new ads spawning behind me that you can't see, that if you were positioned far enough towards the center of the room, your blaze would not be able to reach. Most of the time, your blaze, because you're so slow, you're not going to be able to make it far enough. And you need to be, if you get blaze here, you need to just look behind you, and if it's about to hit the ad that spawns, the tree, you just need to move. And if you die, you're going to die. It is what it is. Just do anything you can not to hit the tree. So as you can see, I turn around, I see I'm about to hit the tree, so I just move out and I almost die, but that's okay. Because if I hit the tree, it would have been a wipe. So, next thing to note, I know this is a lot, but P2 is actually one of the harder phases in my opinion. When the second set of cages come out from the Burning Colossus, as long as you kill the Colossus before his before the cage cast finishes, these cages don't actually do anything. This is very typical of Prog, as well as like kill pools, where you'll still get these second set of cages, but as long as you kill the Burning Colossus, it won't do anything. The red circle breaks, however, do something. So you have to be very aware, if you actually get one, that you're not standing on top of the little ads, because they can still damage them and convert them. So as you'll see, as when my circle pops in 3 seconds, I'm going to take damage. So yes, I took a little bit of damage, and if I was on top of an ad, it would have converted it. Possibly. So then you kill the Dark Colossus. At the same time, you're moving towards the middle of the room. It should be pretty easy because you should be in execute. And then you swap to boss when it's about to die. The reason why as you want to pre-position towards this middle front of the room is because the next set of ads that spawn are the 2 sets of 5, and it's probably the best time in the fight where you can use your grip to get them closer to the heart for healing. So as you can see, these blazes, because I'm so far forward, I don't have to actually worry about them hitting ads. And then I'm already in a good spot to grip any of the small ads that get full HP, as I do here, and then I make my way back forward for the next set of Colossus.
Blue side, blue side.
So as you can see, you can remember this, after the 10 little ads that you grip, there's going to be a new set of ads that spawn on one side of the room. What you want to do is play on the other side of the room, because 2 sets of ads will spawn here, and if you play on the other side of the room, then you don't have to worry about your blaze. So here, someone pings, let's play on this right side, because all the ads are spawning on the left, and we try to move there together as a raid. And then you can see that you don't have to worry about your blaze hitting anything. And this is a dangerous blaze too. This is the one that overlaps with the Colossus. So just being in the right spot gives you one less thing to worry about when you're about to take a lot of damage. And this is just a repeat of the first set of Colossus. You pre-position with the blazes. Instead of being further at the edge of the room, you're now just on the right side where the ads are not. And then you move into melee as soon as the Colossus spawn to get ready for the cages. So here I do get a cage, so I immediately move to one of the markers. Now this is the next... Sorry, I know there's a lot of hard parts of the fight, but This part specifically, as a priest, is pretty frantic.
The breath area and what?
So right after the second set of Colossi spawn is going to be the 3 trees. This is where I use my void shift, and most people do as well, but essentially you're void shifting one tree this fight. So if you get a blaze here, this is where you have to be very, very careful that you don't hit a tree. There's a few blaze sets that you have to be careful not hitting trees. This is probably the hardest one, just because there's 3 trees. So you have to make sure you're dodging multiple things.
Now look for the knocks.
So once your HP gets full, then at least I was assigned to void swap the ad. The way this worked was we actually had an evoker rescuing one of the trees to another tree. In this case, he was rescuing the tree that spawned behind me in the middle to the opposite side. If you can, try to get the void swap where it's just the one tree by itself. It's just easier for the healers as well as for you to just mouse over void swap one tree instead of like having 2 trees next to each other and having to pick out which one has the lowest HP to void swap. In terms of your void swap usage, you want to make sure that you use it when your HP is full, but you also can't wait too long, because if you wait until the tree's like maybe 5 or 10 seconds down the road, you're gonna have an overlap with blazes, and that could actually kill you.
Looks good.
So as you can see, it's the same sort of thing, where we get the second set of the breaks and the cages, but we kill the ad, so the cages are fake, and the breaks will still do damage, so you don't want to stand on top of a tree.
You can swap to the boss as soon as he comes down.
So after this, after the second set of Colossi and you kill the last one, this is actually a very chill phase. You just basically play in the middle of the room and make sure your blaze doesn't hit an ad. But there's really nothing else happening. You're just hitting the boss before P3. So if the Heart of Amidrosol HP is low, you can position yourself closer to the front of the room for prog and grip add-in, just so you can see P3. This is going to be a pretty big DPS loss. But I mean, anything to see P3 during prog is very important, so it doesn't really matter. So yeah, this is just the end, another set of blazes where it's really not that dangerous at all.
Someone canceled my grip.
And then the boss will go into P3. So to recap P2, it's all about moving to the right spots before mechanics come out. This requires a little bit of planning. It's mostly just knowing like where you want to be as a raid versus where the little ads and trees are spawning to minimize the hits on the little ads. Because I cannot stress enough, like the biggest pain that we had progging P2 and being consistent in P2 is we would constantly hit little ads with our blaze and convert them, and that would just be a wipe. But yeah, we'll just go with that in mind. We'll go into P3. So P3 can be very easy or difficult depending on what job you have. If you have no seed to carry, it's a pretty relaxing phase where you just make sure you're in the right spot after each bloom. If you do have a seed, it's a lot harder and you have to be a lot more cognizant of different things. I did have a seed, so I can kind of go over both perspectives and what you need to look out for. But the one thing that in general I would recommend is that you have a countdown timer for firestorms, because you need to make sure, especially as a immobile class, you're able to bring your firestorm to the edge of the room before it pops. And in order to do that as a priest, it does involve a little bit of pre-positioning. With that being said, we can just get right into the phase. So the boss is going to drop and then put swirlies soon after. So you're going to want to hold Void Torrent until after these swirlies spawn that you'll see soon right here, and then you can cast it. Next thing that'll happen are blazes. You want to make sure that you're in the right position. You know, like in our case, the raid is supposed to be stacked to the left of Moon. This way you don't have to worry about your blaze hitting any of the seed carriers on the opposite side.
And then Firestorm's coming, ready to get these way out.
So as you can see, I have a countdown timer for Firestorm, so I'm cheating over towards the edge of the room. Because if I get it, I have to basically sprint to the edge.
Their seed carriers
And then as soon as they come out and I don't get it, I come back for the second set of blazes.
Okay, Blaze is coming. It's a second Blaze. After this, we'll play up towards Star. Bait one more set of swirlies. And then we'll go to Star for the roar. Dip in.
So yeah, this is after the first bloom. You only need to take one tick of this bloom, and you actually should not stay in it if possible. Like if you're trying to greed a cast or something, because this circle will explode and kill you after a certain amount of time. As you can see, it starts glowing and then it'll just pop, and that'll like fuck you up.
8 for Big and Eric.
This is Lust. This is just like very AFK if you don't have a seed.
Now,
Just make sure that you're tucked in with the raid. Like where the melee is right now, I'm gonna start inching my way over there for the first set of blazes, so that it's out of range of the seed carriers.
get Firestorm.
And then right after, as you can see, I always have that countdown for the Firestorm. I started moving out in case I got it, and as soon as I didn't,
Come back in. It's
I just went back in.
Res out.
One thing to note is it's always going to be
Playing up by
swirlies, blaze, Firestorm, blaze, swirlies, seed. It's very, as you can see, it's like very AFK. A lot of people gate after the second bloom, but I actually think if you're ready for it, you just don't need to gate at all. Especially since you're going to be moving back here anyway, so you just use like body and soul or a feather and just fight the wind while doing some sort of an instant cast, and then you can start casting right away.
Here.
And you're already in the right spot.
Corrupted Seeds are DZ and Banana. And now is when you want to make sure you're playing far from the boss, guys. Max hitbox. Raids to the right of Skull. Corrupted Seeds for DZ and Banana. And then Breath and Blaze coming. Breath and Blaze 1.
So this is Blaze into Firestorm. This is where I'm going to start deviating from what most of you will be doing if you're not responsible for a seed. I will take this time to say right now, if you are responsible for a seed, you should do a lot of research, especially because that's the hardest job in the fight and you've gotten 8 minutes into the fight and you don't want to do something wrong to wipe. I will not be going over what exactly to do with each seed because that would take forever. There's plenty of available guides, but essentially if you're not responsible for a seed, you just have to remember where to go after each bloom, and you just AFK and hit the boss. And towards the end of the fight, you're going to want to make sure your blaze isn't hitting another seed, but that doesn't matter right now.
Blazes, and then Firestorms next. Pre-position. Get out with Firestorms.
So this is where I deviate from what most people will be doing, and I'm actually responsible for this corrupted seed.
And then after
Pick it up,
this,
dude,
we're
pick it up.
gonna play
I'm not going to go over exactly like what I'm doing with this seed, because you should be doing your research. I'll just say very few things about it.
Cross through.
Eric, grab this.
But if you were with the raid, you would just dip in, cross through to the other side where the orange marker is right now, and you just play tucked there, and you just not doing anything but hitting the boss. It's very relaxing.
Down big, so just be where we can res him into.
We're over here, Coop.
Yeah, I'm coming.
So one thing to note, if you are for whatever reason responsible for a seed, you want to play as far back as possible without getting hit by a tornado. There's no tornado behind me. I checked when I was moving with the bloom, so I can play as far back as I want. The reason why you want to play far back is just to be out of range as many blazes as possible.
Hellstones. Raids up by Moon, guys. Raids up by Moon. Reslex. Good. And Corrupted Seeds for Craig and Oharu. And Breath and Blaze 1 coming. Breath and Blaze 1 coming. We're gonna play far from the boss. Watch these blazes. Don't hit the seed, guys. Watch the blazes.
So the last thing I will say about seed carrying in P3, the way we did it was we have a partner to swap with every time we have Firestorm. If you and your partner get Firestorm, or if you don't have a partner and you get Firestorm with the seed, you need to make sure that you drop the seed late. you cannot drop it right away, and the reason is because, as you can see, there's a swirl coming, and the swirls target the seeds for this set. If you drop it too early and you take your Firestorm out, the swirl will spawn and you won't be able to make it back in time before it kills your seed. So as you can see, I wait and get closer to the edge before I drop it, and then my partner picks it up before the swirlies even spawn. As you can see, swirlies spawn right now, I think. Yeah, so just like 1 second. If I had dropped it like 1.5 seconds earlier, I wouldn't have been able to make it back if I was by myself. This is where the fight gets hectic, even if you are playing in the raid. If you get a Blaze, this is after the Firestorm from Bloom 3. If you get a Blaze, you have to start being cognizant of your movement. So you want to be checking if your Blaze is actually going to hit a seed, and you want to move out at all costs. So here I just die because of the seed dot plus Blaze. Wasn't much I could do. That was actually quite unlucky, but the last thing you need to know, and this is something like on the very last bloom, when the boss is getting really low and things are getting hectic, you still need to make sure that you dip in and run through the boss so that you get knocked towards the back of the room and not knocked sideways. Look how many people almost get hit by a Firestorm. You see this? This is a little bit lucky that we didn't get hit by a Firestorm, because this is our first time seeing this part of the fight and it is hectic. But after this, there's nothing happening and the boss will just die. So if you can, just be aware that, you know, the last bloom, just make sure you don't get knocked behind you. And after that, that's about it. Our pool was terrible in terms of DPS, but by the time you get here, hopefully the boss should basically die right after this bloom. But yeah, that's the entire Fyrakk boss fight. And I guess we'll just watch till the kill.
Let's go. Yes, let's fucking go!
Yeah, sorry for the scream, but yeah, it was very hyped that we killed it because it was a difficult boss. But yeah, so that's all 4 important parts of Fyrakk. I tried to keep it as short as possible, and I appreciate if you watch the whole thing. I do think this fight will be nerfed. It is just a very difficult fight, and I wish you all luck when you prog.